Divorcees who initiated the divorce, did you regret the decision? What was the reason you initiated your divorce? I recently went through a divorce and I deeply miss my ex-wife. We were together for 8 years and married for 2. I was the one who initiated the divorce and my reasons were selfish. I became dissatisfied with my life and burned out from my career, mistakenly believing that my marriage was the source of my unhappiness. We met in college, connected instantly, and eventually tied the knot after several years. During this time, I was on the path to becoming a doctor, a challenging journey that includes preparing for the MCAT, applying to medical school, attending medical school, and then going through residency. She stood by me through it all, offering financial, emotional, and physical support. She also took on a larger share of the household responsibilities and day-to-day tasks. My career was progressing well, and I secured a spot in my dream residency program at a prestigious institution. We were thrilled to start fresh in a new city and got married before the move, a wedding that was perfect in our eyes. However, our wedding happened just before we were about to relocate, and I felt we didn't have time for a honeymoon. And this is where things started to unravel. It wasn't just the missed honeymoon. Residency is incredibly demanding, with work hours often exceeding 70 hours a week. I felt I had no time for regular dates, and our shared time at home became more isolated. Our intimacy suffered as my energy and desire waned, and even our shared hobby of climbing became something we did separately. I became more distant, wrongly attributing my unhappiness to my marriage. I fantasized about being with someone else, and this took a toll on our relationship. Despite efforts to fix things, I gave almost no effort, and eventually I asked for a divorce. The process was relatively drama-free. At first, I thought I had made the right choice, but as time passed, the weight of my decision became clear. Dating has been a series of lukewarm encounters, ghosting, and other common frustrations of modern dating. I realized I was looking for the connection and support I had with my ex-wife, which I had taken for granted. She has moved on, embracing her newfound freedom and pursuing her career dreams. I'm genuinely happy for her and I wish her the best. Yet, I regret my decision more than anything. She was my everything, and I was too selfish and weak to see it. I would give up my career and anything else to have her and my happiness back. Perhaps, one day, I'll find someone who makes me as happy as she did. Or maybe not. What I do know is that I was foolish and selfish, and ending my marriage is a decision that will likely haunt me for a long time. Story 2. I thought it wasn't working and that I didn't love her anymore. Now, in retrospect, I realized it was different. Basically, what happened is that we were both so similar that we even had kind of the same emotional issues. Nothing too serious. After I did a psychiatric treatment and got better, she started getting worse. I thought that it was just her being mean. After we divorced, she did a psychiatric treatment as well, and she went back to being the woman I fell in love with. But after failed attempts to get back together, the relationship just deteriorated, and there was no way we could go back to being a couple. I was unhappy for a year and got better very recently. We were a really happy couple. We loved each other hard. We had projects and stuff. She was there for me when I needed psychiatric help, but I wasn't there for her when she did. That feeling of being guilty messed me up for a long time. Today, I can say I'm happy. We talk maybe once a month or two. We still love each other, but we don't want to risk the fragile bond by getting back together. We just wish each other well, and that's perfectly fine. Also, I learned a lot from the whole experience and became a better person thanks to it. So I'm forever grateful for having had such a great partner. Story 3. I can't say I fully regret my decision, but I know it was the right choice. My ex-wife cheated on me while I was working long hours in the military, and then tried to cover it up. When I questioned her and uncovered the truth using my skills as a military police officer, she suggested we might need a divorce. If she thought our wedding vows were a joke and didn't mean it when she promised to love me forever, then she didn't deserve to be my wife. She was bluffing, hoping I'd overlook her infidelity, but I called her bluff and proceeded with a divorce. It was quick and cost $570 in North Dakota, a good investment in my future. Sadly, she left the state with my son, my car, and my dog, not even allowing me to see my child. I only saw him twice that year, despite pleading for more time off. The fear that my son might forget me was the worst feeling. My plans for a 20-year military career were over. I couldn't serve actively while my son grew up in another state. When my contract ended, I went home to be a dad. My boy is getting older and he's grown so much. He mimics how I treat people and shares many of my interests. It warms my heart when he says, "You're my favorite dad," in response to me calling him my favorite kid. He's a polite and happy child, content living in two homes and holding no grudges against us, at least for now. I never speak ill of his mother, and we still go out to breakfast when we switch custody. The news isn't all good, though. I learned yesterday that my ex-wife is pregnant by a man she just met. He has 3 kids of his own and recently divorced. I hope he doesn't let her down. My son doesn't need that kind of drama in his life now that he's old enough to be affected by it. Today, I'm a bit of a mess, but I'm holding on. I guess in the end, it's all about the kids and the dog, maybe the car, but mostly the kids and a little bit more the dog. Story 4. My wife and I were good friends for years. After her short, failed first marriage, we started dating, thinking we had it all figured out. We got married about a year later. Around 2 years in, we began to suspect we'd made a mistake, but we continued on. By our 6th year, we were both frustrated with each other, fighting easily despite also having good times. During one argument, I angrily suggested an open marriage might help, ironically meaning it for her as she had a higher intimate drive. Months later, she asked if I was serious. We had a long talk and agreed to try it. She started seeing a friend, which upset me more than I expected. Despite my struggles, eating little, sleeping poorly, exercising excessively, and drinking more, she seemed indifferent. I eventually found someone to date, which is much harder for a man in an open relationship. We went on dates and planned to be intimate, but my wife was against it, saying she wasn't ready. When I suggested she stop seeing her friend if she had issues with me dating, it led to a huge discussion. I retracted my request, hoping it would lead to balance, but I felt insecure and frustrated. The situation came to a head when a friend sent me a spicy photo. My wife went mad, forbidding me from seeing the girl but refused to stop seeing her friend. Looking at myself in the mirror, I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. Despite the financial struggles, I knew I had to leave. The next morning, she begged me to stay, but nothing had changed. I regret it because with personal growth, we could have worked through our other issues. We're good friends now, years later, both in long-term relationships, so reconciliation is unlikely. But without our past flaws, we could have had something great. Story 5. Finding someone who regrets their divorce can be challenging. For me, it wasn't so much about regretting the decision to divorce, but rather how I went about it. I tried to initiate things as nicely as possible, not wanting to give her any reason to claim I was the one at fault in the marriage. She had been mistreating me for years, and when she brought up the idea of having children, I reached my breaking point. Despite being a quote-unquote nice guy, I allowed her to take advantage of me. I moved into a terrible studio apartment while she stayed in our house. I continued to pay all her bills, even after she quit her job and demanded more money from me. She trashed the house and spread lies about me mistreating her verbally. She drained a lot of money from me, and the house ended up in foreclosure because she refused to sign the necessary papers. This severely impacted my credit for 7 years. Before the financial crisis hit, I pleaded with her to sell the house while we could still make a profit, but she let its value plummet instead. In the end, she left the country, leaving me with the mess and not caring about her own credit. Initially, I had a different plan for the divorce. I considered lying about moving to a country she wanted to live in, selling the house and assets, and then filing for divorce before we moved. She would only get half the money that way, but I thought it was too harsh. I opted to be nice, and it backfired badly. Story 6. I ended an engagement, if that counts. I was and still am very focused on my career. I worked 60, 70 hours a week between 2 jobs, paying off all my student loans and maximizing my 401k and IRA, all the right financial moves. The issue was that I neglected her personal needs. I saw it as building a future for us. My hard work was setting us up to buy a house in 2 years without PMI and retire by 50, if not sooner. I was playing the long game and I was doing it well. But I'd come home, eat, and collapse from exhaustion. I didn't give her much time, even though I was physically there. Eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and told me I had to choose between a future with her or with my finances. I chose my finances. It wasn't out of anger, but because I saw her as financially irresponsible, and I didn't think it would work if that's how it had to be. We remained great friends. For a while, I was happy to be free to work as much as I wanted. Then I started to regret it deeply. It was my fault, my choice, and we were great together. Even if I had eased up on work, we could have still retired early and bought the house without PMI. I didn't need to max out both a 401k and an IRA. It was more than enough, but I could, so I wanted to. Luckily, she realized she wanted kids. I'm firmly against having children, and I thought she was too. We discussed it, but people change as they grow older. So it was a small consolation to know we avoided that potential conflict. Then I met my current partner, who, if not for tax reasons, would be my spouse. Due to our incomes, we'd actually pay more in taxes if we got married. So I don't regret my choice anymore, but I definitely did at one point. And if you're enjoying the video and you're learning a thing or two from these stories from other people, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 7. He was the love of my life, my high school sweetheart. After 6 years together, he fell into a deep emotional struggle. I tried everything to help him, even suggesting therapy. After our daughter was born, he was only intimate with me when he was intoxicated, which was rare. It was the only time he showed any desire towards me. I tried hard to communicate and figure things out, but whenever I complained about anything, he thought I was blaming him. Whether it was about coworkers or being frustrated with my parents, I just couldn't vent to him. He believed I was obviously blaming him and would come up with some twisted reason why. Eventually, I stopped talking about my issues. He made fun of anything I liked that he didn't, to the point where I only listened to bands he liked and watched shows and movies he enjoyed. I was isolated. He didn't like my friends, so I never invited them over and eventually lost contact with most of them. I was heavy after having our daughter and thought that played a role, so I lost 80 pounds, but that didn't help either. I lost myself. I wanted to leave, but I had nowhere to go. I grieved losing him before we were actually separated. I became very sad and very desperate, turning to pills to numb the pain. I was not in a good place emotionally. Then I got a cool job that I loved and I had friends again. My coworkers built me a computer so I could game with them, but I was soon banned from any of it and was made to get a different job. He said there was no room for advancement, especially for me. By this time, we were sleeping in separate rooms. I missed my friends, and I'm not proud of it, but I cheated with one of my guy friends from my cool job. I felt extremely guilty, but also wanted it at the same time, so I left him. 8 months later, a sober me apologized to him for what I did and confessed to using pills while we were together. We talked, hung out more, and did stuff with our daughter together. It started to feel like when we first got together, and I was hopeful for my family to be whole. His self-esteem was much higher, and he wasn't so negative. It felt like progress to me. So 3 months after we started dating again, I found out he was seeing 3 other girls and actually said he loved one. I was devastated. I vented to my best girlfriend about it, and the next day she called me to tell me that she was one of the girls and didn't know he was seeing me and the other girls. She didn't know what to say when I vented. That put a hole right through me. He called me to yell at me and tell me it was my fault she left him and that he loved her. I stopped intimate ties with him, grieved once more, and told myself I deserved it for what I did. I eventually moved on and decided to focus on myself for a bit. Years later, I'm now happily married to my second husband. He's a great stepdad, and my ex is a friend to us. I realized we weren't good for each other, but we are all pretty good friends now and work together to support and love our daughter. Story 8. The only thing I regret is getting married in the first place. The man I married was fun and exciting while we were dating. We had adventures, he was interested in me, I was interested in him, and the intimacy was amazing. But then we married and things went downhill quickly. He became reclusive and increasingly jealous. Preparing to go out to dinner with friends or even my brother would trigger a barrage of questions. Why are you putting on makeup? Are you expecting to see someone better than me? And I don't understand why I'm not enough for you. After years of degrading comments about my appearance, interests, friends, and life, I just couldn't take it anymore. This was not the man I married. The fun-loving, easygoing man I fell for had turned into someone I despised. For a long time, I hated myself for feeling this way. I thought I must have changed or wasn't doing enough for our relationship. So I spent less time with friends and even limited family time to be with my husband more. I tried for months to get him to go to counseling, did a couple of activities, did classes together, and found new hobbies we both enjoyed. But his response was, if you need me to change to love me, then you don't really love me. I was heartbroken. I expected to spend my life with him, have children, and grow old together. But then I realized the most important person in my life should be me. I got caught up in the idea of marriage and the excitement of a new relationship. Asking for a divorce was terrifying. He reacted with anger, messing up things, accusing me of cheating, blaming our problems on me. He lost it completely. I left the house quickly, taking my keys, wallet, and phone. I stayed with my parents, feeling guilty about the situation. Fast forward to signing the divorce papers. When I finished signing my name, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom, happiness, and relaxation. My life was my own again. Story 9. She had been withdrawn and acting weirdly for a couple of weeks, including during our 5-day cruise. I finally brought it up during a fight, and she admitted to acting differently because she had given up. I said that if she wasn't going to even try anymore, then I wanted a divorce. The next day, she asked if I would consider a separation instead. I agreed to that, but it was essentially over. She would never again re-engage in the relationship again. We ended up talking a lot more over the next few months, actually, in some areas, more than we had ever had in the previous 16 years. But it would take some work to overcome the difficulties that we had been having. She was clearly uninterested in doing any of that work. After a few months of separation, she decided that she was done. I regret that running my mouth in a moment of anger is an excuse that she's used over and over as to why she wouldn't try. I regret that my kids have had to go through this because of my mouth. I regret losing the family that I had grown very close to. I do not regret that the marriage is over. As soon as we separated, I started therapy for my issues. That therapy has put me in a better place emotionally than I have been in since I was a teen. When she moved out, I found that I really hadn't been as happy as I had thought. Story 10. He struggled with bad habits and was very controlling and mistreats me. The situation worsened and I finally reached my limit. I didn't want my son to grow up in that environment, so I obtained a restraining order and left. I don't miss him, and I know I made the right choice for myself. Part of me wishes I had tried harder to help him through counseling, even though I'm aware that it might have only been a temporary solution, and he likely would have reverted to his harmful behavior, something we've attempted many times before. I did it for my son's sake. I worry that my son might have been happier if I had stayed, especially during visitation times, which are supposed to be supervised by family members but still fill me with anxiety. There were good times when he was sober, but when things were bad, they were truly terrible. Deep down, I know I made the right decision. No one should live in fear of coming home every day. I hope the peace in our lives makes up for what my son is missing out on, but I still second-guess my decision, and I wonder if I should have tried harder to make things work. Story 11. Yes, I think about it every day, wondering if I had made the right decision. We were young when we started dating, and we were together for 20 years. No children, just one dog. We had a lot of problems, with bad habits being the biggest issue, affecting everything else. Looking back, it's clear I needed to leave. We were codependent and I enabled his behavior. My life is better now. I come home to a space that's my own, beautiful and comforting. I'm not walking on eggshells every day. I don't dread the weekends anymore. I can go out for a drink with friends without it leading to a 2-day binge at home. My quality of life has improved significantly. But leaving came with a lot of pain. We had to sell our first house, something I was so proud of. Now I worry I'll never be in that position again. I had to give up our dog. I recently learned he went to rehab, travels a lot, and is moving to Hawaii. This news devastated me. He's doing all the things I begged him to do when we were together. Why now? Was I not good enough? I have moments of regret, wondering if I should have stayed and pushed harder for his sobriety, supported him more. It's tough because I miss him so much and wish he could be a part of my life now that it's so peaceful. If any of these stories got to you, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and thanks for being with me on this one.